It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Well, hello there, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. I'm Michael Evans. I'll be your host here this morning, and thanks for joining with us. Glad to have you on board. You're joining us in the second half of our program this morning, in our third segment. And we're going to dedicate the next two segments to talking about something which is very, very, very important to our republic. It's been brewing for months, but it finally spilled over into the public. And if you're not aware of what's going on with this, you should be. Dianne Feinstein, the other day, went out on the floor. Now, she is the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee. She's the chairperson, chairwoman, whatever you want to call her. And they are under a requirement to oversee the intelligence agencies in the United States. Now, that includes, the NSA, the CIA, and the FBI, and any other intelligence agency, the NRO, for those of you that aren't familiar with the National Reconnaissance Office. Now, that's the organization that owns and controls the satellites that that monitor everything on the ground, domestically and foreign. And she's the chairwoman. And a while back, they began to investigate, and this has been going on for a long time now, the secret rendition program that the CIA had back when Bush was in office. And the purpose of this was to take a look at the issues surrounding whether or not the rendition issues were, abusive of individuals' rights and so forth and so on. Now, if you recall, when Obama was trying to get into office, he was swearing that he was going to prosecute Bush administration officials that had participated in these, black ops renditions. So anyway, the Senate Intelligence Committee had to gain access to CIA documents, which are highly secure. Everything's a super secret, right? And so the CIA said, "Here's what we'll do. We'll give you access to some computers in a secured building, and you'll be able to access CIA documents that way." Now, the CIA was choosing what documents that the Senate would be able to see. And there were, folks, we're talking about like I think the number I heard was 60 million documents or something, some staggering number of documents. And it might have been 6 million, and I've forgotten, so please don't hold me to that. But it's a lot of documents. Apparently, there was about 1,000 documents, including some video, that these Senate Intelligence Committee staffers found in the trove of documents that were there, that they removed and stored securely within the scope and the framework of their authority, and within the scope and the framework of their security clearance, because they were damning evidence of abuse by the CIA. Well, the CIA went out and monitored these computer systems and actually removed some of the documentation that was on there in an attempt to keep the Senate Intelligence Committee from seeing the true extent of whatever they've done. And I mean, I can't pinpoint what it is because nobody's supposed to see this. And when they were accused of it by the Senate Intelligence Committee, privately now, this is them having an internal argument, they admitted to it. Now, John Brennan, who's the director of the CIA, who's, by the way, a Muslim, a convert, in a discussion the other day that he was having with, of all places, the Council on Foreign Relations. Why is the head of the CIA, having a conference with the Council on Foreign Relations, which is supposed to be a corporate entity, not a government policy group? Well, you all know how I feel about the Council on Foreign Relations. I consider them even more dangerous than the Federal Reserve. But the CIA has been lying to Congress, and to make matters worse, they've been spying on Congress, spying on the staffers, spying on these machines. And then they lied to the Senate, to the Senate Intelligence Committee. Now, look, if you are an oversight committee, I just want to put this into the right perspective for a moment so that you grasp the concept of this. You're charged with overseeing intelligence agencies, CIA, NSA, NRO, FBI, whatever. And you are, therefore, given the highest levels of security clearance because whatever these agencies are doing, you have to be aware of it, right? So, I mean, there's nothing that they're doing that you shouldn't be aware of. There's nothing that they're doing that you're not privy to. There's nothing that they are participating in which is above your clearance grade, right? I mean, let's be honest. How can you oversee an agency if you don't have equivalent clearance to see everything that's going on? This would be the equivalent of asking a police chief to investigate his own department, but saying that there's certain files and things that and reports that he can't see that his officers are creating. I mean, the absurdity of it is obvious. So there is no limitation to what the Senate Intelligence Committee can and should know about what the CIA and other agencies are doing. And yet the CIA feels that they are above the law. And they feel that they have a right to be greater than the master as a servant. You know, the question at this point is between what's going on at the NSA and what's happening over at the IRS and what's happening over at the EPA and what's happening over at the CIA. Is there anything else that our federal government can do, and the intelligence community specifically, and the executive agencies, is there anything else that they can do to destroy their own credibility anymore? I mean, I don't think that there is a more suicidal bunch out there, and I'm speaking, I'm speaking not literally, but figuratively. I don't think that there is a more suicidal group out there than these agencies within the federal government that apparently feel as if they are rogue operators and have no oversight and can do as they choose, based on their own determination of what's appropriate behavior. Is there anything else that they can do to destroy their own credibility? Is there anything else that they can do that is violative of the Constitution? Is there anything else that they can do to endanger us more in the face of our neighbors, in the face of our friends, and in the faces of our enemies? Is there anything else that they can do to increase the risk of injury to this nation? I don't think so. The one other thing that they could have done They did. They turned back and bit their master. They spied on Congress. The heck were they thinking? Dianne Feinstein went out on the Senate floor the other day, and she made a 38-minute speech. Now, those of you who have ever heard this show before, you know that I abhor Dianne Feinstein. She is the epitome of an individual who is drunken on her own power and authority, drunken on the authority and the power of the federal government. She is an ideologue, a self-serving individual who truly believes that she knows more about what's right for you than you could possibly ever know. And she is so removed because of her term and how long she's been in Congress that she's so removed from the realities of the world for the 315 million of us that don't live in that little bubble. Maybe it's 312 million of us. That she can't possibly be objective. Well, okay. The point is this. I don't like Dianne Feinstein one little bit. I classify Dianne Feinstein as a traitor on the highest order of the American people and her role and her oath. However, she brought this out publicly. In a 38-minute speech on the floor in the Senate, she openly exposed what's going on. And she has flat out accused the CIA of searching these computer files that were used by her staffers, and 3 major implications. And they open up the door to criminal violations because this stuff, and constitutional violations. One, violating the Fourth Amendment, because this computer system belonged to the Senate Intelligence Committee. And the CIA, by breaking in there without a warrant to do so, essentially, was one agency violating a branch of government's right to privacy. Secondarily, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which is a congressionally created act of law that makes it a crime, a criminal act, to hack into a computer system, especially one that's owned by the government, and an executive order number 12333, which bars the CIA from using domestic surveillance within the United States of America. And this is also a violation of the separation of powers, because remember that the CIA is an executive agency, and Congress's job is to oversee them and make sure that, you know, it's the old adage that the legislative is the watchdog of the executive and the judicial. The judicial is the watchdog of the legislative and the executive is supposed to be a watchdog over the judicial and the legislative. Each of the 3 powers that be are required and demanded to be a watchdog over the other. Now, I'm the first to admit that they have hopelessly failed in that effort. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But it doesn't change the realities of the fact that the law still stands, and that's what they're supposed to be doing. Now, John Brennan, who's a convert to Islam, many Americans don't know that, by the way, and you got to ask yourself this question. Why does the mainstream media keep that knowledge from you? Why does the mainstream media not talk about that? If for argument's sake, this was still the Bush administration in play, and anyone else that a Republican president or a conservative president had put in authority as the director of the CIA had converted to Islam, do you think, or let's not use Islam, let's convert, let's say the conversion was to Judaism or Buddhism, or was a convert from atheism to Christianity, do you think the media would expose that and constantly introduce John Brennan, the director of the CIA, who is a recent convert to Islam? That's exactly how they'd introduce him every single time. So why don't they for John Brennan? Well, for two reasons. One, he's a democratically appointed director, and two, they don't have a problem with Islam. Now, he spoke at the CFR, and he tried to deflect this 38-minute speech that Dianne Feinstein made on the Senate floor. And I've listened to portions of it because I've been unable to find the entire thing because it wasn't exclusively about this issue. But the problem here is you got to recognize something. This is not a partisan issue. Dianne Feinstein is a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat and a big government proponent. She is one of the strongest proponents and supporters of the surveillance state that we live in. And John Brennan is also, he's one, a Democrat, two, a strong proponent of the surveillance state, and three, he's an appointee by Obama. You know, the other day I put a quote up on our website, on Facebook, excuse me, and you know I put up a lot of quotes from a lot of founders and things like that, but this was one of mine. And here's what it is: the massive surveillance state being assembled is not intended to resolve non-existent crimes or keep you safe, nor is it to provide you with universal health care. It is being assembled to determine who among us will be a threat to those who consider themselves our masters. It is only about control. Now, Feinstein and Brennan are both not only believers, architects of this surveillance state. And for this thing to blow out and become public is, to borrow a phrase from Barack Hussein Obama, unprecedented. She came out and made a statement. She said, "I have grave concerns that the CIA's search may well have violated the separation of powers principles embodied by the United States Constitution, including the speech and debate clause. It may have undermined a constitutional framework essential to effective congressional oversight of intelligence activity or any other government function." Now, I got to tell you something, folks. Anytime you have an agency such as the CIA, who is in control of vast quantities of the nation's secrets. They know every little terror group around the world. They know every terror group domestically. They know they have secrets. They have secrets on the secrets of the people in the House and in the Senate and in the executive and in the judicial. I got to tell you something. When they resist oversight as a rogue agency operating independently of any authority, from the actual elected government people. I can't think of another word that better expresses it than treason. A Senate committee that's charged with oversight of an agency has a right to everything that that agency has, and nothing may be held secret. Nothing. And yet, that's exactly what happened. The implications of this are staggering. I'm going to talk to you next in our next segment, because we've only got a couple of minutes left in this one, about the response, however, of another individual that, quite frankly, is pretty negative about all of the surveillance state that's being built, and that's Justin Amash. He is a House member, and he came right out and made the following statement, talking to Dianne Feinstein about her outrage, or faux outrage, or whatever you want to call it, about the fact that the CIA is spying on her. Here's what he had to say. Hypocrites like you are why the public doesn't trust Congress. Boom. But I'm going to take it to another level, and when we come back, we're going to explore that a little bit, because I think he's missed the larger point. You see, the CIA's actions now have reached the border, let me rephrase that, have passed over the border into treason. Because when you have an agency with that level of authority, that level of knowledge, that level of power, that is operating in a rogue fashion, folks, treason is the only word that can be used to describe it. You're listening to America's Voice Now. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a moment.